I first met James Ceresia when I was working on setting up the Udall dinner. James was basically the stage manager who organized what people said, when you showed up, when you got on the stage, and it was a terrific success. James has been on the Pima County Democratic Party Executive Committee for at least a year, and he is the chair of the Young Democrats Task Force. James is also a law student at University of Arizona James E. Rogers College of Law. He is set to graduate next year. Young people face a lot of obstacles these days when it comes to getting into a good college, buying a house, being active in the community. There are just so many obstacles, and they basically feel as if they can't take part in the American dream. We hope to hear more about that, as well as what it's like out there to organize Young Democrats. And with that, James, the floor is yours. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate that introduction. I guess kind of talking about what the American dream sort of means to at least me. And that's always been having a good career, being able to take care of yourself and having a family, being able to own your own home and, take the vacation that you wish to take, having a good work-life balance on top of that. And it just seems more and more like a dream than a possible reality. Talking about, start first with education. You are given an education here in the United States from, it used to be sometimes preschool to 12th grade, but now you see more and more they're dropping preschool and it's becoming kindergarten to 12th grade. I think it's pretty abundantly clear that you can't do much anymore with just a high school degree. So then you have to put yourself through college, and you're already then asking young people to take on a lot of debt to participate in college, because the high school does not get you anywhere anymore. So you're taking on a lot of debt to go to college. And then even then, the field is difficult to play. You're still finding difficulty getting into the job market as a young person, even with a college degree. So then there is the pressure to get another advanced degree, furthering the need to take on more debt. And by the time you're done with schooling, you could be looking at well over 6 figures in debt for a position that is not paying you nearly as much as the debt that you've taken on. So I think that's a kind of a good place to start of understanding, our hands are a bit tied. There's not much that we're able to do. And, when you ask where are young people in political involvement, we're busy trying to fend for ourselves out here and trying to be a part of the economy. So takes our full focus. And we don't really have much time afterwards to be involved politically.
One of the things that you had mentioned is that one of the top issues is reproductive rights for Americans today. It's a right that you had when you were born, but now it's gone. What's the reaction among young people about, the Dobbs decision, which basically, overturned Roe v. Wade?
I can't really speak much about the woman's experience, but I think a big part of it is decisions are being made about our bodies by people that, it's not their body. They're making decisions on others. The big part is also, reproductive freedom. It's not so much as the government saying, we're not going to tell you you can't have an abortion. We're also not able to tell you whether or not you're allowed to have children or whether you're forced to have children or not. It's about bodily autonomy. And we're now seeing that the government does actually get a right to just, tell us how we can live our lives. And where does that buck stop? You're taking a really old document, and once there was found to be a right to privacy, no longer. So, what does that spell? We've had so many rights created out of the right to privacy. The federal constitution does not include that specific language. You see it in states. The Arizona state constitution, we have there's a provision very explicitly giving us the right to privacy. And then on top of that, it doesn't exactly specify further what a right to privacy is. But the point being is we can't rely on the institutions that we once looked to protect us and uphold our rights. And it adds to a frustration that a lot of people feel like either change is too slow or our laws are arbitrary. Why bother with politics when all of this is so very, very much able to go away in just 1 second?
I think we're all familiar with the fact that it's a very polarized election taking place now. What effect does that have on young voters? Does it make them feel like they would take a side, or does it just alienate them? How does the political infighting and attacks affect young voters?
Well, it's exhausting. My generation has only ever grown up with polarization, and it's just gotten worse. It's just exhausting to keep having to feel like you're doing a fight where you can no longer be, friends or friendly with family members that are taking a certain side on you. It almost feels as if you're either on one side or you're against me. It's just so divisive, and it's really exhausting, and it's sad. And I always like to think that more things bring us together in this country than not, but it's not looking like that at the moment, and it's disheartening. And for that reason, a lot of young people, and I don't think it's just exclusively young people here, where we're like, we don't want to be involved in politics. It's so nasty, and it's so disheartening. I'd rather just try and see. I'd like to just be the change that I can be, in my own community with my own friends and my own family.
One of the things you had mentioned when we talked earlier is the lack of affordable housing for young people today. That when it comes to houses, there's really nothing available, but if you can find something, it's a 7% mortgage. And you were also telling me about landlords, how they have, overweening power over tenants. What's been your experience with that?
Yeah. So I've not, well, let me step back. Across this country, either the majority, and it looks really to states in the area that you're living in, of whether or not the area is predominantly landlords or homeowners or tenants. So when I was living in DC, the laws overwhelmingly favored tenants, being that DC is just like more of a renter's city, as opposed to come here to Arizona, where most people own their homes. The laws mostly favor landlords. I think it's smart to have a good balance. No one should have more power than the other. You're entering into a contract, and it should be an equal contract. We're seeing that people are just not able to afford homes as they used to, especially again when you're taking on all this debt as a young person for school. When you have so much in the red, banks don't really want to lend to you, and then you can go on to predatory lending and mortgage companies that will just give you a junk loan, and then further yourself into debt. So it feels like it's just 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other in that point of whether you have a bad loan or you don't get a house at all. So renting is definitely an option that people are turning to. But kind of, you want to be able to afford your own home. I think that's, as I was saying about the American dream, I think it has to do with most people wanting to own their home, and they feel that is an achievement. It's a property it's not property investment. It's one of the largest investments that a person makes in their lifetime, and one of the largest pieces of capital that they own. And it goes further into that younger people are finding less and less availability to invest, where most of their savings or most of their earnings are going into their necessities in life. They're going to their student debt payments, and then you don't really have much left over for savings. So you're not having the ability to invest as freely as once you might have been able to see.
So James, you managed to escape all the negative effects, or at least overcome them. You were, I think you currently are the Young Democrats Task Force leader for the Pima County Democrats. And for instance, I know that your group had a meeting when Adrian Fontes came to town on October 1st, and we had a nice happy hour, and you met immediately before that. What is it like to try to recruit young people to get active? What's your experience been?
It's difficult. When I really noticed this as well, doing a voter registration drive for younger people. So frequently they are not choosing parties; they're going independent, they lean towards one party or another, but they don't. They're so tired of party politics. They're going to be feeling for the candidate. What's the candidate that speaks to me? They want to find someone that they feel like can follow, and they feel like this person's a good leader. I don't want to just see the D or the R next to your name. That can help me make the decision. But really, is this person that I'm going to feel like I'm going to be able to trust? Because it feels like so many people in political offices have failed them. Look at the huge popularity of young people around Bernie Sanders, an independent senator, running, of course, on the Democratic ticket, but he drew so much popularity with younger people because he was speaking to them. He was talking to them about the gripes that they've been having with the system and with the country, and feeling that they're just stuck in trying to follow their parents' footsteps in a path that's really no longer available to them. So they turned away from traditional Democrats because this is the person who was speaking to them.
So one of the things that I did notice is, of course, you're politically active. You've been politically active. You told me most of your life. You were a field organizer in Iowa for Biden for president back in 2019 and 2020. You're running for the recording secretary of the Pima County Democratic Party. What is it that got you active? Why are you active today, despite all of the grim outlook for young people?
Yeah. So I got involved with politics back in college. I was just a political science major. It was a pre-law major. Definitely had one of the easier requirements. So I was like, okay, this seems fun. Not really knowing what I was getting myself involved, but I liked the science behind it. I thought it was interesting and intellectually stimulating. And my friend was working for the Clinton campaign, and I got myself on board with her, and learning more about Clinton. I was really, really taken with her. I really believed in her leadership. I liked her views. So I got myself involved early on in the primaries. And following that, I then went to DC, and I worked in other areas of politics. And then I didn't get myself to Iowa, and I was campaigning for Biden. So kind of to make your point of how I'm able to look past the partisan divide. I think it's fun. Maybe I'm a sadist, but or is it a masochist? Yeah, maybe I'm a masochist, and I like dealing with it is stressful. It's anxiety provoking. It's scary, but I feel involved, and I feel like this is my way to give back. I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of hope for the future as well. But in order for us to get there, I think that we have to start taking accountability for the actions of our country, and for you have to say, okay, we cannot rely on other people to give us what we've been asking for. We're going to have to no longer wait around. We have to step up and do it ourselves. So I think you're seeing more people, younger people, do that. But it's a very big active choice.
All right. Let's open up the floor for questions from our attendees today, and we'll start with Michael Bryan. Go right ahead, Michael.
Actually, I'm monitoring the chat for questions right now, and I see that Karen Gleason has one. She'd like to know your thoughts and perspective on affirmative action, presumably in employment and education, especially since there's an affirmative action case going before the Supreme Court very soon, in which it might be struck down. Yeah,
I can't really speak to much of affirmative action, but in my experience, and especially in the context of employment and education, it's where, at least in more of education, it's understanding that there are systematic differences in the way that education is given in this country, especially to lower income areas. Especially when we took a big stance on school vouchers against it, because it's not going to the underprivileged, it's going to those with a bit more privilege. So it's taking away from the public school systems. So you bring on an understanding that with these larger schools, these bigger schools, these the higher education institutes that are top ranked, they're looking for a very certain thing, the high grades, the outstanding achievements. And I think it's taking not so much simply as because this is your race, or it's more of looking at your background and saying, okay, this person has had systematic disadvantages having nothing to do with who they are, or who they are as a person, but they seem to be very intelligent, and they've come far given the circumstances they've been in. Yet, unlike another person who comes from very well off, they were able to afford an SAT tutor, they were able to afford a homework tutor. It's looking beyond just grades at times and seeing what is this person doing. So it's taking into the mindset of not everyone is cut from the same cloth, but that doesn't mean that we're not all capable of achieving greatness.
Gail Kanamaris has I added a syllable. Gail has a question about your organization. She wants to know, what is your group's relationship with the U of A campus Dems, if any? And secondly, what is your group doing to get out the vote among young voters?
Yeah, so we don't, I'm friendly with the UA college Dems, but they're largely their own thing. So that's really just kind of how it is. They're focused a lot more on the national side, but I know that this new administration, they're looking at bringing into a more local level, which is exciting to see. And we partnered together on trying to get events out with them. They're busy with school, and I can't blame them. I'm busy with school with myself. And getting young people involved to get out the vote. Largely Mission's been taking over. Mission for Arizona, they're doing most of the get out the vote, and they were doing a lot of the voter registration on the campuses. So we let them do that, but more so of pushing young people. I registered a lot of people at our college, and I putting on events to get people involved. But other than that, it's difficult. We rely on outsourced sources as well. It's a very small group, and they're largely all working or in school. So there's not much that we can do outside of as I said, registering people and having these conversations with our friends and family, and trying to have different events.
Hey, I have a question for you. I'm personally interested, since you're here as a young person, you're going to be representing a demographic, I guess it's inevitable. I'd like to know what your perspective is on what the Democrats and the Biden administration has done that you approve of, that you think is helpful amongst young voters.
I'm sorry, Michael, you cut out for a second, or at least on my end. Would you mind just repeating that?
Sure. I'd like to know what you think. That's my dog. What you think about we must be having a package delivery. What you think about how the administration has done in terms of young voters, what policies they've pursued or legislation that they've passed that has been well received and has increased the positive perception of Democrats amongst young people.
The Biden administration?
Yeah.
Well, a big part was the student debt relief. A drop in the bucket for some, but at least it seems to be that there's I've heard from both camps of this is hardly enough. It's just 10,000. It's hardly a fraction. And then others like, at least it's something. And then of course now it's being halted by federal courts, or waiting on that. So others have said, what's the point if it's just going to get held up in the courts, and then it ultimately ruled unconstitutional, or just an overreach by the administration. So I think a lot of it has just been keep away of, hurtful policies that could have been implemented in a different administration. Unless you're really, and I think that it's in general is unless you're really looking to see what the achievement, and we have done achievements. You look at the child tax credit, you look at the infrastructure bill. These are huge legislative achievements. Not getting enough attention, and I think that unless you're really looking for it and you're really tuned in, it's easy to miss. So it's not really helping much.
That's unfortunate.
Okay, let us turn to George Beverly. George has his hand up. Go right ahead, George.
Yes, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate your talk. The way that you articulated the situation for young people is the direct affliction to people of color, Black people for sure. So when you talk about the outlook of what the American dream looks like, it looks like that in all these Black and brown communities. And we're continually to fight for those. And so that was just a quick comment. So I completely agree with that, but on a different side of what you were talking about. My question is you mentioned about education and what young people go through. So majority of young Black and brown kids in these urban areas don't get enough attention in a political arena. So what can people like yourself and organizations do to reach even beyond beyond high school, but even like in junior high, to get kids interested in politics? Because I'm sorry, one more thing. Because my daughter surprised me a couple of weeks ago and said, Dad, I want to be a leader and I'm joining student court. So, and she's 12, she's in 6th grade. I'm super excited about that.
Now it's my dog. We're getting also a package. So it's not exclusive to you, Michael. So give me 5 seconds for the package. Oh. Bruiser.
James, it's okay. We really can't.
Well, but he's got a long time. One second. I apologize.
All right. So just to reiterate, if you would like to ask a question, raise your hands. I see a number of people who have their hands raised. Craig, Andrea, we'll get to you as soon as possible. Or put your question in the chat. You can see that Michael will find your question. So let's return back to James. Go right ahead, James.
Sorry about that. UPS delivery, never schedule those on time. So to get your question of getting young people, especially at a earlier level, I think we've failed in civic education. I even remember my own civic education back in 8th grade. It was a elective course, and it was one of those rotating. We're going to show you what electives you can choose when you enter into high school. And so it was maybe like a month course or something, very short amount, and kind of gave you the very basic structures of government. And I don't really remember much beyond that. I think by having more comprehensive civic education at a younger age, it's not just going to be for to lower economic areas or any sort of race. It's about just getting all young people involved. The government affects us all in so many different ways, and it shouldn't be excluded to those that understand how the process works. I've found myself being like, wow, I didn't understand so much of this until I actually entered law school. And that's definitely not the case with so many people, where they're entering into law school so they could learn more about how our government works. It affects us all, and we should have an understanding from a very early age. And I think that, some people would get excited about that and others might not, but at least they know how they can involve themselves in the political process and how they can exercise the First Amendment right to petition the government for grievances.
All right. We have Craig Markham up next. Go ahead, Craig, with your question.
Hello, James. I'm curious about how young people have reacted to the January 6th insurrection, and does it have any lasting effects with them?
Well, at least from the, I also spend time in with circles of mostly Democrats, and I don't really know many younger Republicans, but at least from the people that I've met and I interact with, it's very deplorable. Even those that are a bit more Republican leaning, the event itself is deplorable. And it's scary. And, so many young people were the ones that were turning in the January 6th rioters, like, oh, that's my dad, or, oh, that's my neighbor, that's my teacher. Here you go, FBI. They took it upon themselves to stand up for democracy. As opposed to the lasting ramifications of January 6th, I really couldn't say. These people, they're not going away, no matter what. We can keep voting against the candidate they put up, but they're just going to keep putting up more candidates like that every next time around. I think that this is going to take more than just elections to fix. There's a deep divide in this country. And I wish I had the answer of how that's supposed to be fixed, but I don't think that simply voting away their candidate is going to be the answer, because they're just going to come back the next one and be like, okay, this is our guy next time. Yeah, Susie, you're right. Pandora's box has been opened. I think there's something that's got to be addressed. You can't. There are thoughts and concerns that this country has on both sides. People are being lied to, but there are some specific grievances that they have as well. I can't say how much are specific and true, because the election denial, that's wrong. But these people are also being lied to, and I think that addressing education as well. If they were better educated on how to tell what's false news and what are what is to be believed, that's an issue. So they're not going away right now, and I think that's just kind of something like we're like, well, how do we deal with it?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Andrea, go ahead with your question. I see you have your hand up.
Hi, James. I'm glad to see you here today. And before you go, tell me how I can email you or contact you, because I want to give you some information in response to what you were just talking about, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I'll give Larry my contact information. You can send it along.
Okay. My question is, you're on the executive board, so I figure maybe you've heard something or know something about this, when the candidates, especially governor and in the state, the ones that are in the state and at the Phoenix level, when they talk to voters, especially young people, are they talking to them about the cost of living, their wallet? You brought up paying for school loans and how expensive it can be for a young person to have a school loan. And I bring this up because while the ads I'm seeing and the topics I'm seeing brought up in debates are very important, because we want to keep the country from turning into a dictatorship, which it's on the road to. Do you know if the candidates are talking to voters, especially young people, on these issues that probably they have a lot more concern about, whereas the border, loss of democracy may not be so much on their radar? And I thought you might have heard something about that.
Well, yeah, from what I've experienced and from what I've heard, largely no. I mean, we're not a voting bloc that people speak to, because we vote sporadically or we don't vote at all. It's kind of
okay.
So we're considered, at least from a political expenditure point of what to spend money on for campaigning. young people are it's like kind of a waste of money. Which is opposed to, Bernie Sanders, and you also have
Justify?
Elizabeth Warren,
Mhm.
where they relied so much on small dollar donations by reaching out to younger people and others that felt disenfranchised. They were talking to us about issues that we care about. When you kind of go on the campaign trail, we've really been hitting home abortion. We've been hitting home, the election integrity. We have hit, talking about border, and most people, a lot of voters right now, even more, the undecideds, those that we're really trying to convince. It's like, yeah, we care about all that. That's great and all, but what about the economy? The economy is really, hurting, and it's that's kind of what it's coming to. And as opposed to talking about what's been told to young people, no, I can't speak for all of us at this moment, but at least from what I've heard, no one has been saying to me, well, aside from Kirsten Engel, at least, is just like, no, I don't feel like we've been talked to of, hey, your issues are important. We're going to address this when we get into office. Also, as Adrian Fontes has spoken to some extent, but his office is largely contained to the duties of Secretary of State, not really so much as the legislation to help young people participate in the American dream. So I do want to make that clarification.
All right, Michael, you've got your hand up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, we've had a few more questions in chat. Wanted to pull them up. Let's see. Susie Anderson wonders if you could address the issues of diversity for youth and how it affects young people today. Not sure exactly the point she's trying to make with that question, but if you'd like to speak on the issue of diversity and representation amongst youth and maybe how viewpoints about diversity have changed in your generation.
Yeah. So I think we're an incredibly diverse generation, especially in terms to, our sexual orientations and our gender identities. We're finding that the constraints that might have been placed, on previous generations, and a certain understanding of this is one way and this is the other, doesn't exactly apply to us. And perhaps it didn't apply to the future generations, but we're finding it much more acceptable to be a lot more true to who we are and to explore who we are. As opposed to diversity, in the political sphere, there's really none. It's mostly white straight men, let's be real. And of an older generation. And so, we look at our leaders and we're like, well, that's not me. When they try to get involved as well, there's also a feeling, well, the people at the table who are choosing our leaders are also not like me. And, it's exhausting. If I want to get myself involved, it's exhausting that I then have to take the extra step of saying, okay, well, this is how we're supposed to be treated. Let me teach you cultural competency. Just because you're a member of a diverse group does not mean that you are able to teach cultural competency. That's also an assumption that hurts. To have to then take the extra step of teaching someone, this is how this group is supposed to be treated, and this is how this group is supposed to be treated. People go to school for that. People are in specific positions to teach that. That is not just simply by being in that diverse group can you then explain exactly what this group needs. You can try your best, but again, then you're taking on an extra added step of simply, I just want to bring my voice to the table. I didn't want to come and educate all of these people on diversity. I just want to have a voice at the table. On top of, bringing more diverse people into the room, you can say where we accept diversity, you can say it till the cows come home, but, when a diverse candidate or a diverse person looks into the room and only sees a certain type of person, doesn't matter how much you can say we accept diversity. If it doesn't reflect that, then that person is generally not going to be like, okay, I'll trust that. Let me take this chance. Because, that might not be the case, or they might have to then, again, go that extra step of training these people, explaining, well, no, you can't do that, or no, this is not what this group needs. So it gets a bit exhausting, and it's kind of a catch-22.
There's another question from Paula Schulzberg, who wonders if you could address issues on climate and environment. I mean, this is kind of more of a theoretical thing for some of us older folks, because a lot of the effects will probably be after we're gone.
Yeah.
But it's very much not theoretical for younger voters. How are they thinking and reacting to current political messaging and environment around environment?
So a lot of people that I've spoken with, and even a good handful of them, once upon a time, you had the single issue voters of, I want to make sure my candidate is pro-life. Here, it's like, I want to make sure my candidate is pro-environment. If you're not, I'm not going to support you. Because for a lot of people my age, the environment is the most important concern. Doesn't matter what we do, today or tomorrow in terms of, rights. Those are important, but, does it really matter that I can get a vote if, there's no country, there's no world. We're living in a post-apocalyptic society. Maybe that's going to an extreme, but we're not heading in a right direction with climate change. We're killing our planet. There's not so much respect for the fact that the people in power. Well, look at President Biden. He's going to be 81 in 2 years. These effects that we're having today, they last 20 years, and he's not likely going to be around in 20 years. But I am, and my generation is going to be, and we're going to have to deal with those effects. So it gets frustrating that we're having people in charge that are making these decisions for years to come, where it's not going to affect them, but it definitely will affect us. So, I get a little upset saying that, because it's just like, how is that fair? Yeah.
Paul Stapleton Smith would like to know what you're seeing amongst your peers regarding interest in self-organizing and unions to represent themselves and affect power and change in politics in the workplace.
Yeah, great question, Paul. There's a big push right now. You're seeing it, that large interest in unions. Now, I think people get a little, they're like, and let me think about that. The larger push that you're seeing from new unions today is they don't want to be involved with the old unions, because they feel like they're sometimes as worse as the actual employers. They're like, we want to just start our own thing. Collectively, it's ourselves. The biggest people, the biggest group that are now unionizing today, the new unions they're actually college educated. And they're younger. It has to go with, look back to a couple months ago where we were having a labor shortage. There were jobs around, but people weren't taking them. Younger people, I can't. There's a big push of saying, I want to be respected in this position. I want to be able to have a life. I'm not just a drone. I want a good understanding of what I'm getting myself involved in. I want a good living wage. It's not fair that certain people have to take three jobs simply just to support themselves and their family. It feels like, we're just being squeezed like a sponge. And then, when we're dry, we're expected to give a lot more water from the sponge out of nowhere. And I think that's been the big push for unionism. It's like, well, these are areas of work that you're not really generally seen being unionized. Certainly from a demographic that's not generally been unionized before, but it's like, no, we're going to take responsibility and accountability for ourselves. And we're not going to allow ourselves to be pushed around. And so, they start their own unions. Actually, so labor law is one of my, and employment law are two of my biggest fascinations.
Good for you.
It was a very great question, Paul, and I appreciate it.
You're on mute.
Muted, Larry.
Susie Anderson has her hand up. Go right ahead, Susie, and unmute.
Thank you. James, how about the kids that don't want to go to college, but they want to have a good paying job? Do you speak to the issues of tech school in high school or Pima Community College, those kinds of things? Do you, try and help support kids getting into those programs so that they can, work as a plumber, an electrician? They're certainly going to make a living wage doing that. HVAC technicians. Can you address that?
Yeah, I personally believe that associate degrees at community colleges and certain programs for trade schools should just be, included in the education that we give as a right to our students. Because again, high school does not really get you very far, especially you can't, have a comfortable life, it seems like, and support a family with just a high school degree. But we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need all these sorts of service industries, with that a trade school can help teach with, because college and other sorts of schools are not for everyone. Some people don't have the brain wired for that, and I think it's dismissive enough to simply say, well, if you can't do college, then you really don't belong in our society. That's just not the case, and these industries can provide very well. Our plumber back home in Jersey, we couldn't ever get any work from him during the summer because he was off in his house in the Hamptons. They can take care of themselves. And Lord knows we need mechanics, we need electricians, we need HVAC, specialists. We have to start pushing away from unskilled labor, because eventually it's going to be automated. It's just true. It's going to be cheaper and it's going to be easier. And it's also, in this tech-driven world, people have a push to develop new technology out of curiosity or just out of funding and finances. So where unskilled labor is going to be automated. And what are you going to do when, that happens? And then you just have these unskilled workers, just sitting around unable to work. We push them out. So instead of making, to prepare for that ultimate reality, we have to be able to prepare our public for skilled labor.
Okay, thanks, James. I had a question of my own.
Yeah.
And it was, so I just got word this morning about from the public records about how many people voted in different age groups. Mm-hmm. And as of right now, October 31, only 5% of people who are age 18 to 24 have voted, and only 7% of people who are 25 to 34 have voted. So I see the world looking through the eyes of a precinct committee man, which I've been since 2006. What methods or tactics would work to attract younger voters? For example, sending text messages or having house parties, canvassing on the University of Arizona, or canvassing people and registering voters at music concerts at night. What techniques do you find would be effective?
Yeah, so I don't think it's really much as registering people to vote. You can look and see, we've had huge voter registration drives, registering so many people to vote, because it's right there. You're right there in front of them. But that's far different than actually getting them to vote after the fact. So first, I would like to ask a follow-up question for you. What would the statistics for young voters, for last election?
I don't have that. I just have the information currently, but I'll find out.
Yeah, I think that there's for starters, we're always going to have lower turnout for midterms. But I think that there is a trend. We're seeing more young people vote. It's going to be small numbers. It just is what it is. But I think that these numbers have been going up, especially compared to the last midterm. People are finding that, especially with vote by mail, it's becoming a lot more accessible. And people are feeling as well that their vote is well, either they feel like their vote actually counts or their vote doesn't count. So, there's two ends of that spectrum. But in terms of how you get people to actually vote, you got to give them a candidate they care about. I think that's the big thing. And it's not just having a candidate that they care about. This candidate's got to be active in campaigning. They have to run a very strong campaign, and they've got to make it part of their platform to work with young people and showing them like this is actually what I'm doing and what I care about. I think Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are a bit of an anomaly. Well, not so much as an anomaly, but those are just the candidates they care about. But you look at local elections. This is more of a broad section, and not just to Arizona, but you look at local elections, and when you have a younger candidate, you will see more young people turn out for them, especially if they're a good young candidate. People want to vote for those that they feel represent them and reflect them. So when you're giving us just like these really old people, it's like, okay, yeah, great, more of the same. Why, sure, let me, woohoo, let me go out and vote. It's like, well, no, give me someone that really excites me. Like, yes, I can't like Beto. Beto is just someone that people are really excited about. He makes voting feel sexy. There's a party to him. You get young people that are excited and they're turning out to vote in those ways. So, you got to bring them a candidate. I think that's just the kind of what it drums down to, is stop just giving us people and being like, this is the Democrat, this is who you vote for. And it's like, no, you got to give us someone that we're really, really excited about, because things need to change, and more of the same is just not what young people want. It feels that like change has just been too slow. And, I understand change has to be incremental. It doesn't just happen overnight, but, it's still it kind of, that adds to the apathy, where it's like, well, I need change now. This is not working for us, and it's not fair that I have to wait 20 plus years to actually, see the change where I can actually, feel like being in America is equitable to me. And it comes down to like fairness, and, it's unfortunate that it doesn't always feel fair, and that's not fair.
All right, James, we've almost run out of time. I wondered if you could bring our meeting to a close by telling us how our members of Democrats of Greater Tucson can get a hold of you. How can we find out more about you? And you're running for corresponding secretary of the Pima County Democrats Executive Board. How can we support you?
Yeah, so recording secretary.
Sorry.
It's okay. Two secretaries, it makes things confusing. How to get back, the best way to reach out to me, we have let's see. We've got an email for our committee, which is going to be one of the best ways to reach out. So I'll send that to you, Larry, because it's youngdemspcdp@gmail.com. youngdemspcdp@gmail.com. We're going to try to do more events, especially after the election, because I don't know if you kind of noticed, but it's a busy election, and it's taking a lot of time and a lot of energy, and adds to a lot of excitement. But it's certainly detracting from events that we're going to put on later, when we actually can feel like we can breathe a bit and maybe have something to celebrate for. Fingers crossed. So, that would be a great way to just get involved. Everyone's welcome to it. I think it's important to understand what young people want. It's not really, closing it off to just young people. It's great for certain events, but then other events, it's important to open it up to everyone. So there's an understanding of, oh, this is what young people want.
Thanks very much, James, for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. And with that, thank you everybody for coming. We look forward to seeing you next week. Our meeting is coming to an end, and so I'm going to close the meeting. Thanks for attending, everyone. And thanks very much, James. Really appreciate it.
Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you.